when everybody is making a lot of money and everybody is piling in, it usually means things are going to go bad soon. I have sold shares in most countries in the world, Anthony. Nearly every stock market in the world is at an all-time high. Somebody better look out the window and get worried. So I look out the window and I'm getting worried. There's too much happiness, too much good times, too much money around the world.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm your host, Anthony Scaramucci. It is a real honor for me, someone I've known for a very long time. And Jim, I've known you before you've known me because I've read all your books before you engaged me at the SALT conference about 15 years ago. But Jim is a friend. He's an American investor, a financial commentator. Please welcome Jim Rogers to our show. He's the co-founder of the Quantum Fund with George Soros in the 1970s. He's also a person that has very deep knowledge of the global markets and commodities. But the thing that's nearest and dearest to my heart, Jim, about you, and I think you may remember this, I grew up in a motorcycle shop. So my uncle was a motorcycle entrepreneur out here on Long Island. He was known as the Ghost Motorcycle, here in Port Washington. And so your stories about riding your motorcycle around the world and your book called The Investment Biker, and In Venture Capitalist. These were books that I grew up on that I'm very, very grateful to you for writing. So first thing I want to say is welcome to the show. But then secondly...
Wait. I want to say,
yes.
Anthony, I remember Ghost extremely well. I and some of my classmates at college bought a motorcycle from Ghost 100 years ago, probably before you were born. So I remember Ghost was so famous at one time. I guess it doesn't still exist, but Ghost Motorcycles was very famous all over the Northeast.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because so many people, Malcolm Forbes, Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, all came to my uncle's motorcycle shop. And he taught me a lot about life there, sir, because I got to meet the likes of people like you, but also the Hells Angels. So it was a very large bandwidth of people. And of course, he taught me about how to think like an entrepreneur. And I appreciate, and I knew that from our first experience that you had known my uncle. He passed away at the age of 94 in 2021, having served in World War II. 50 years with that company. We've turned his shop into a museum. So if you ever come back out here to Long Island, we've got some vintage bikes in there, Harley Davidson, BSAs, Ducatis. I mean, it's a fun little trip and a piece of nostalgia here on Long Island.
Do they still deal in bikes or just a museum?
No. When he passed, my cousins have his bike collection on display in that shop. They don't sell bikes anymore because they're all onto different types of things, but they're all motorcycle enthusiasts. But I admire that in you. You remember Jack Shepard? I know we're going down memory. Remember Jack Shepard from Goldman?
I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning.
He covered you guys in the 70s. He loved my uncle. But anyway, so I want to take you back there, though, if you don't mind. I want to go back to the early part of your career. Why? Tell the audience. Well, I know where you're from, but tell the audience where you're from, and tell the audience your odyssey to getting to Wall Street and some of the things that led to you embarking upon this sort of career.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Alabama. My phone number was 5. That's not a typo. My phone number was 1 digit, 5. And I went to college in the East and had a lot of fun. And I learned about motorcycles when I was a teenager, motor scooters, and I was hooked. And I had a motorcycle in college, which a group of us bought from Ghost Motorcycles. And I more or less had motorcycles for a long time. I had a long time keen desire to go around the world on a motorcycle. And one of the reasons I retired young was so that I could do it. Well, Anthony, in those days, you may remember Red China and the Soviet Union. You couldn't just get on a motorcycle and drive across Soviet Union or Red China or places like that. It took me years to get permission, but finally I got permission and I did it and loved it.
Well, I love that part of your story. How did you meet George Soros?
How did I what?
How did you meet George Soros, sir?
Oh, well, I was a young man. I was looking for a job. He was looking for someone to hire. He needed a young man, and so we hit it off, and it worked. It was successful.
And why investment, sir? What was it about your college days and the early part of your career? Why did you make the decision to go into the world of investments?
Well, Anthony, I was like a lot of other college kids. I was going to go to law school, medical school, business school. I was a confused young man. I had no clue. But I got a summer job once because I liked the guy and he liked me. I knew nothing about Wall Street. I thought stocks and bonds were the same thing. All I knew was it was in New York and something bad had happened in 1929. But I got down there and I loved it. I couldn't believe how much fun and exciting it was because I love knowing about the world. I didn't know that at the time, but I realized that I loved knowing what was going on in the world. And if you could do that well on Wall Street, they would pay you. And they pay you a lot of money if you could do a good job. And my gosh, I didn't go to law school. I didn't go to business school. I didn't go to medical school. I went to Wall Street as soon as I could.
So this is am I right in saying this is about 6.5 decades of investing? Is that fair to say?
Well, it's a long time. I could add it up, maybe. I don't know if I can add that high, but it was probably 1964 or five
Yeah,
that
so
I
six,
stumbled.
six, 60 years of investing. So what have we learned, sir? What have we learned about markets and cycles and geopolitical risk? What are some of your general thoughts about how people should think in terms of the framework of their investing ideas and philosophy?
Well, the most important and the simplest lesson is we're all human beings, and human beings, maybe they change because they use telephones, maybe they use computers or something, but basically we're all the same. I mean, we still get scared, we still get greedy, we still make the same mistakes that people have been making for 200 or 300 years in the investment world. That's the main thing. It's all happened before. And so when somebody comes into you, Anthony, and says, "Oh, it's different now," send them out of the room. It ain't ever different. It's all the same human beings making the same mistakes that we've made for centuries.
Okay, fair enough. So take us a little bit around the world. Give me your snapshot view of East Asia, China, the beautiful country that you live in, Singapore. Tell us how you feel about that part of the world, and then we'll bring ourselves over to Europe and North America.
Well, whether we like it or not, the 21st century is going to be the century of Asia. I mean, it's already happening, especially because of what's happening in China. But there are a few billion people in Asia. They're all smart, save their money, work hard, and save for the future and love investing. And if they start a successful company, many people will invest in that company. I mean, you heard of Sony, for instance. Well, when I was a kid growing up, Japanese cars were a joke. Japanese motorcycles were a joke. Not anymore. You know, the world changed a lot, and the world learned, and the world adjusted. And that's going to continue. As far as I can see, the next few decades are going to be the decades of Asia. Yes, other places will do well, but the future is Asia.
Uh, Jim, we have thankfully avoided a global conflict. Not that there haven't been wars, and there's some wars going on right now, but we have thankfully avoided a global conflict since the Second World War. Assess that for us. Are we going to be able to continue to do that, or do you think global tensions are rising among some of the superpowers?
Well, Anthony, I read the same press you do, and I can see that there are various and sundry small wars. But if you look back in the past, that's how big wars started. There would be a small war here and a small war there, and people would ignore it. And the next thing you know, those small wars turned into big wars. Today, 1974, 1975, looks terribly similar to what happened before the Second World War when all these small countries were hitting at each other. And the next thing you knew, it was out of control. Now, I hope it's not doesn't get out of control again, because if we have another war, oh my gosh. But you know as well as I do that we have a war in Ukraine right now. We have a war in various other places. So, I mean, I am not saying I am not optimistic that we're going to avoid wars, certainly in your lifetime.
Yeah, no, I feel that way. I feel that way as well. So what country and what economy are you most excited about right now?
Oh, well, I wish it were that easy. I certainly wish it were that easy. I have sold my shares in most countries in the world. I'm still long Uzbekistan, and I would hope I will buy more Uzbekistan. I still am long China, but I have sold shares in most countries in the world, Anthony, because I mean, nearly every stock market in the world has had an all-time high or near an all-time high. Now, I've been around long enough to know that when everybody is making a lot of money, somebody better look out the window and get worried. So I look out the window and I'm getting worried. There's too much happiness, too much good times, too much
Yeah.
money around the world.
Hi, everyone. I'm one of your hosts here at Wealthion, Andrew Brill. In these weird economic times where the market is up, then it could go down, a lot of people calling for a correction. Some people think it's just going to keep going up. But if you need help being financially resilient, head over to wealthion.com/free and we'll give you a free, no obligation. We don't expect anything from you. We'll just help you evaluate your portfolio and let you know what we can do to help. Again, head over to wealthion.com/free for a free, no obligation portfolio review and let us do the heavy lifting for you.
What about, so what, I mean, we never know this, sir, but over the course of your career, what are some of the things that prick that bubble? We never know exactly what it's going to be. I'm not suggesting that, but when you feel the euphoria, what are usually some of the psychological things or some of the fundamental things that change direction?
Well, what always happens is everybody gets very happy. Many new people get drawn into the markets. Lots of, young people, they call their friends and say, I've discovered this new thing called the stock market and it's fun. You can make money and it's easy. It's
Yeah, right.
easy to make money, and we're seeing a lot of people now talking about how easy this is to make money, not just in the US, just about everywhere. Look at Japan. The Japan market was down for 35 years. That's not a typo, 35 years. Now it's making all-time highs. So just about everybody in the world has joined in now. And Anthony, who knows what's going to happen? But I've been around long enough or read enough to know that when everybody is making a lot of money and everybody's piling in, it usually means things are going to go bad soon. Now, I have not started selling short, not yet, because the madness doesn't seem enough yet. But I am certainly very worried. I sold my shares in many countries. I'm not short yet, but I'm looking and watching.
My career has been that cycle, sir. I was 27, thought I knew everything. I had my comeuppance in the middle of that know-it-all megalomania moment that you're referencing. If you were talking to a young investor, and we get a lot of young investors on here, what cautionary tale would you tell them, or what advice would you give them from your perspective, having gone through all of these different market cycles?
Well, Anthony, that's remarkable. When I was 27, I knew everything in the world too. You and I both, when we were 27, we were the smartest kid you'd ever seen.
I
That's
was,
part of the problem.
sir. Yeah, and I had my comeuppance shortly after I had that brilliant thought about myself.
Well, I did too. At one point, I did a genius move. I tripled my money when everybody else was losing their shirts. Needless to say, I knew I was the best there was, and 6 months later, I lost it all. So the market has a habit of teaching what you don't know, and that's what I would say to new investors, young people, as you mentioned. Be very worried, be very careful. And what I learned was, while I knew a lot, there was always something I didn't know. And the thing I didn't know at that time was much about trading. I knew about fundamentals. I could do great research, but I didn't know much about trading. And the thing that I learned, I assumed everybody knew what I knew. I found out very quickly they didn't. And it cost me money because they invested on what they thought and what they knew. So my advice to everybody is, please don't listen to other people. Don't listen, except maybe Anthony. Don't listen to hot tips. Avoid hot tips and invest only in what you yourself know a lot about. Now, Anthony, I tell some people this and they say, well, that's boring. And my advice is be boring. If you want to be a successful investor, don't worry, be boring, and you'll probably be successful.
It's so funny you say that, sir, because I was in the UK talking to a group of young people, and I said, this is how I made my money. I put a little bit in the market every month. I put it in a couple of diversified things, and I never look at it. And people say, well, you didn't trade the oil market. You didn't day trade this or day trade. I said, well, no, I did do all of that until I got my face blown off. And now I don't do that anymore. But my question, sir, when you think about the United States, a country that you and I love, we have this unconditional love affair for the United States and our system. There's things that I'm worried about. I'd like to get you to react to. Sanctions, U.S. Using sanctions all over the world against our adversaries, tariffs, the impending or potential trade war that we're having right now with some of our most important trading partners, including China. And so the question is around the yuan and the U.S. dollar. What do you think that relationship is going to look like over the next decade?
Well, you bring up some remarkably insightful points. Unfortunately, because the world is changing and those things are possible flashpoints, no question about that. I own some renminbi. I own the one, as you mentioned, but I'm not buying a lot more right now because history shows that when you had two top powers and one stable or stagnant and maybe even declining, they have often clashed. That's what history shows. I'm not suggesting America and China will be at war, but they have often in the past done so. Just because politicians always want to hit somebody else and show how tough they are, and conceivably that could happen. And we've often had conflict between two countries that are on top. And I don't know why Washington thinks they have to control the world. I don't know why they think they have to put sanctions on everybody. I don't know why we have to have trade wars. But somebody in Washington thinks that's good. Anthony, you know, the United States has been around since 1776. In all but 19 years since then, we have been at war with somebody. There's been a small war, big war somewhere. Now, Washington seems to like war. I don't particularly like it. It doesn't do us any good. But conceivably, if America and China work together as we did for 20 or 30 years, China made a lot of money, we made a lot of money, everybody would be better off. But for some reason, somebody gets angry and starts slapping other people. My view is that America and China could make fortunes together, as we did before. I hope that happens again.
I've been always fascinated about this approach that you've had to the world. I grew up, in a middle-class family. My dad was a blue-collar worker. I was a little bit more narrow-minded than you, frankly. I didn't get to travel until my mid to late 40s. I was that typical American, sir, if you don't mind me saying so. I was here in the United States. We have a tendency to get focused on America or American-centric. How did you get the travel bug, and how did you get so comfortable with so many different countries and cultures growing up the way you did?
Well, I guess I got the travel bug because I grew up in a town where my phone number was 5, and I knew there was something else out there, and I wanted to see it. I guess that's where it comes from, but it's certainly been around in me for a long time that I wanted to see other places and see the rest of the world. It's been a long time problem with me. I've always wanted to see the world. I've been to many, many countries. I've driven around the world twice, as you know. Yep. But I did it because I wanted to see. I wanted to know what was out there. I'm sure that someday my children are going to say to me, gosh, why did you do all that adventure, all that travel? We could be really rich if you hadn't spent so much time and money having your adventures and seeing the world. But Anthony, I can tell you, A way to learn about the world is to travel, but also a way to learn about investing is to travel, because you will see other things. You will see new opportunities that it's hard to see sitting in New York or San Francisco or something. If you're going out there around the world, you're going to see things and you're going to say, oh my gosh, look at that. I didn't know people did things like that. It's going to lead you to new experiences and new ideas. That's all. My only answer is that I wanted to see the world, because I had never been anywhere except Birmingham.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing part of your story. So let's go to some ideas. I know that you like silver right now more than gold and some other precious metals. So give us your thesis there, if you don't mind.
Well, I own silver. Here's some right here, just to prove it to you. But I mean, you know as well as I do that gold is making all-time highs, and silver's still down 40 or 50% from its all-time high. Now, they often move together. They move in tandem at times. So in my view, buying something that's down 40 or 50% from its all-time high is better than buying more gold. So it's that simple. I know from history, and you too, that the world's going to have problems again of some kind, whether we like it or not. And when the world has problems, I mean, Anthony, I'm an old peasant. I'm from the backwoods of Alabama. I know when there's a problem, it's nice to have some gold under the closet or under the bed. Have some silver in the closet, because no matter what, many people will turn to gold and silver in times of turmoil, and me too. I hope I'm smart enough never to sell my gold and silver. I hope I'm smart enough to buy more in the future. Not so much as a hot investment idea, but as a way to, it's insurance. It could be a hot investment idea, but it's certainly insurance, if nothing else.
Okay, yeah, well said. I'm in your camp. Have you thought at all about digital assets, sir, like Bitcoin, or is that out of your realm?
Well, I guess I'm not smart enough. I have never figured out the rationale or the logical use of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. They're great trading vehicles. I know a lot of people who trade them. Of course, many of them have already disappeared and gone to zero. But if you're a trader, it's wonderful. I am not a trader, Anthony. I don't particularly like it. I'm not any good at it because of that. So I do not have, long or short, any cryptocurrencies, and never have.
Yeah, well said. I assume that much. I just thought I would bring it up. All right, we're gonna bring in some audience questions now, so they're gonna pop up on the screen. I'll read them out. And do you have any thoughts on the libertarian Argentinian president Javier Milei and what he's going to do in the country, or what he's doing in the country? And this is from Antonio from Argentina. And so the question to you, Jim, is Argentina investable?
Well, Antonio, thank you very, very much. Argentina, a little over 150 years ago, was the great success story in the Western Hemisphere. You know, people in Paris, if somebody rich came in, people would say, oh my gosh, that guy's as rich as an Argentinian. Argentinians were unbelievably rich at times in history. They've also been unbelievably poor at times and bankruptcy. They have politicians at times worse than we do. And that's hard to believe that anybody could have politicians worse than we do. But at the moment, the people running Argentina are doing a very good job. My only problem is I've seen this before. I've certainly invested in Argentina at times. I don't have anything there. I admire what he's trying to do. I hope he can pull it off. My problem is there have been 4 or 5 times in the last 100 years when Argentina has done extremely well and then collapsed. I'm not predicting it's going to collapse again. I'm just reminding people this has happened before.
I understand, these are fragile systems, but it does feel like it's moving in the right direction. Let's go to the next question. Jim, what would be the best way to invest in agriculture today? This is Luke from Canada.
Well, Luke, that's a very good question. The best way is to become a farmer. I mean, if you like being out in the hot sun and getting dirty and sweaty, you'll make an absolute fortune. You'll own the land, which will go up a lot in price. You'll make a lot of money from the products. You'll be one of the richest people you know. That's the best way. Now, I'm lazy. I'm not going to become a farmer. So another way is to invest in companies. There are companies like John Deere, there are fertilizer companies, there are seed companies. There are companies all over the world that are big in agriculture. There are many plantation owners that are publicly traded around the world. I mean, so that's one way. But if you really know what you're doing, you can trade futures. I mean, if you can buy cotton futures at the right price or wheat futures at the right time, oh my gosh, you'll be unbelievably rich. You can get rich in 2 hours if you get the timing right. You can also get bankrupt in 2 hours if you get the timing wrong. So the best way is futures if you're good at it, or become a farmer, or find the stocks. Or another way, of course, is to buy countries, invest in countries that are agricultural countries. Australia has a lot of agriculture. Canada, you're from Canada. Canada's got a lot of huge agricultural provinces and spaces. So that's another way to participate.
Terrific. Thank you, Jim. Let's go to another question. So, Jim, you've written several successful books. What inspired you to write about your experiences? And what advice would you give aspiring authors? It's a good question from Stanley from New York.
I didn't plan to write a book. The first night I got back from my motorcycle trip around the world, I was at a dinner, and at my table was the head of Fortune magazine. He said, "Where you been? I haven't seen you in a while." I said, "I just went around the world on a motorcycle." He said, "Don't tell anybody. I want to do an article in Fortune." So we did, and that led to a book. Then the publisher said, "Oh my gosh, this could be an interesting book." So it was purely accident, and that happened, but I did it and loved it, and then I've continued from my other trips and from some other ideas. I've learned to write them down.
So, sir, before I go to another question, I want to wish you a happy birthday because I know your birthday's coming up. But on your birthday in 1987, the 19th of October, we had a stock market crash. What were you doing on that day, if you don't mind me asking, sir?
Well, it's funny. That was probably the best birthday I ever had, because I had been shorting the market, and I've been talking everywhere about the market was going to collapse. What did I know? So I had been shorting the market, and Anthony, lo and behold, it happened. The market, the 19th of October was the biggest one-day market collapse in history at that time. And I'm sitting there short the market. I think I know what I'm doing. But it was because I could see that markets everywhere were very over exuberant. There was a lot of speculation, a lot of everything, a lot of people talking about how easy it was. Prices, multiples got very, very high. So I shorted the market. Who knew? I certainly didn't know it was all going to collapse on my birthday. Certainly the best birthday I've ever had.
Amen. I had to ask you that question. I wish you a wonderful, happy birthday, sir. Let's go to the next question. Jim, could you share a mistake or regret from your career and what you learned from it? This is Rachel from California.
Oh, Rachel, you want to hear about my first wife? What a horrible mistake. What a horrible mistake that was, Oh, my gosh. And at the time, I was unhappy about it. Now I look back and say, thank gosh I'm not married to her anymore. Thank God I got out of it. But that was a terrible mistake. I mean, I guess many people have a first marriage. That's a mistake. Mine certainly was. Both of us were too young, too inexperienced, and didn't know what we were doing. Caused me a lot of pain. I learned a lot. Fortunately, if one has a bad love affair, it can be useful. You can learn a lot. But my goodness, it's a horrible, horrible way to learn. I don't suggest it to anybody. There was another time. I mean, there have been times. I was once in the early 70s. I made a huge profit. I tripled my money when everybody around me was going. I owned puts. The market collapsed. I made a lot of money. So I waited for the market to rally, which I thought I knew it would. This time I decided I'm not going to buy puts. They're expensive. I'm just going to sell short. So I put all of my money after 3 or 4 months on the short side. And you know the rest of the story. Within 3 or 4 months, I was wiped out. I lost everything. The market was smarter than I was. What that taught me, and fortunately, if you learn from your mistakes, it can be useful. What it taught me was that I didn't know much about trading or market actions or how markets acted. I didn't realize there were a lot of people who didn't know about the markets. A lot of people made a lot of mistakes. Now I know that I'm not the only one who makes mistakes, that many people are in the markets, and you have to take that into account too if you're going to be successful as an investor.
Okay, let's go to another one. You've traveled the world extensively as an investor and an adventurer. How has your travel shaped your philosophy on life and investing? This is James from Colorado.
Well, thank you, James. One of the things I learned was that I love adventure, and so that has certainly shaped me. Yes, if you can propose adventure to me that's going to be educationally well, one of the great things about travel is seeing the world. You learn a huge amount about the world and therefore about yourself too. So I will tell you, if you have the time and the money, I encourage everybody to do as much travel as you can. You don't have to go first class. You don't have to stay in 5-star hotels. There are lots of ways to travel the world, but you will be astonished how much you will learn about yourself and about the world. And if you're an investor, you will probably also find some good investors, because you will see things and you'll say, oh my gosh, look at that. How do I invest in that? You won't see that sitting in your apartment in New York.
Great answer, sir. Thank you. Let's go to the next question. Mr. Rogers, could you give one piece of advice to young investors who are just starting? What would it be? This is Carlos from Florida. We get a lot of young investors that tune into us, Jim.
Well, thank you, Carlos. That's an extremely good question, and one I wish I had learned when I was young too. But to repeat, what you need to know is you must learn as much about the markets as you can. The first answer is do not listen to hot tips. You're going to hear a lot of hot tips in your investing career. Ignore them. Only invest in what you yourself know a lot about. You're going to go to the restaurant on Saturday night and hear a lot of hot tips. Please ignore them. The best advice I can give anybody is only invest in what you yourself know a lot about. Don't listen to hot tips. Hot tips will ruin you. Hot tips are wonderful, exciting, great. They will ruin you. So stay away from hot tips. And people will say you're boring. You only invest in what you know. Be boring. Avoid hot tips.
Well said. Let's go to the next one. All right, my friend, we're out of questions. It's been great to have you on. I hope that we can do this again soon. I do miss you, Jim. You're an incredible person and somebody I've learned a lot from over the years.
Well, thank you very much. I would be very keen to do it again. When I realized that we were going to do this show, I was so excited because I haven't seen you in a long time, and I knew it would be fun, educational, and fun as well.
And I have to tell you, sir, you really touched me by bringing up my uncle. You know, I miss him, and we learned a lot from him over the years, and we had a lot of fun in that motorcycle shop. And I really appreciate you bringing him up.
Well, I remember ghost motorcycles. I cannot tell you how important it was to many people, mainly young men in those days, but now women too. Ghost was so famous, so important to lots of young males in those days. I can still remember the first time I went to Ghost. I was shocked. I was nervous because I knew these guys were way ahead of me. I was way in over my head. But Anthony, what a marvelous place that was. You said they turned it into a museum. That is wonderful for the world and for New York and for Long Island. So you've done a good thing.
I appreciate it, sir. Okay, hopefully I'll see you soon. Thank you for joining Speak Up.
That's a wrap on another discussion here on Wealthion. Thank you for joining us. If you need help being financially resilient, please head over to wealthion.com and sign up for a free, no obligation portfolio review with one of our registered investment advisors. And remember to follow us on social media for the latest news and information to help you invest wisely. And if you could like and subscribe to the channel, we greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can find out when we post new videos to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, stay informed, be empowered, and may your investments flourish. And if you like this content, please watch this video next.